In the rugged wilderness of Wyoming Territory, 1868, a lonely widow's act of compassion toward a wounded Shoshone child would ignite a dangerous confrontation between two worlds. Sarah Miller had fled west to escape her painful past, seeking solitude in a remote cabin near the Wind River. She never expected to find a half-drowned native child clinging to life in the churning waters. Nor did she anticipate the consequence of her mercy when the boy's father, Chief Running Elk, arrived. With his warriors under the cover of darkness, surrounding her isolated cabin with vengeance in their hearts. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The spring snowmelt had turned the normally tranquil Wind River into a roiling, angry beast. Sarah Miller pulled her woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders as she made her way along the riverbank, her boots sinking slightly into the mud with each step. The afternoon air carried a damp chill that penetrated her layers of clothing, but she had learned to appreciate even the discomforts of her new life. They reminded her she was still alive, still breathing, still moving forward, one foot before the other. 3 years had passed since she had buried her husband and infant daughter back in Pennsylvania, victims of the influenza that had swept through their small town with merciless efficiency. 3 years since she had packed what little remained of her life into a single trunk and boarded a westbound train, unable to bear the sympathetic glances and whispered condolences of neighbors and friends. The remote cabin she now called home had belonged to her uncle, a fur trader who had died without heirs. It sat on the edge of civilization, exactly what Sarah had wanted. She paused to collect a handful of early spring herbs that grew along the riverbank, carefully placing them in her basket. The roar of the river seemed louder than usual today, swollen with snowmelt from the mountains. Something caught her eye downstream, an unusual shape caught against a fallen tree that jutted into the water. At first she thought it might be a deer that had been swept away by the current, but as she drew closer, her heart nearly stopped. It was a child. The small body was draped over a thick branch, dark hair streaming in the water, dressed in what remained of buckskin clothing. Without hesitation, Sarah dropped her basket and waded into the frigid water, gasping as it soaked through her skirts and bit at her skin with icy teeth. The current pulled at her, threatening to sweep her legs from under her, but she pressed forward, reaching the child in moments that felt like eternities. It was a boy, no more than 8 or 9 years old. His copper skin paled from cold, and his lips tinged blue. His face was marked with cuts and bruises, and blood seeped from a wound on his forehead. He was Native American, Shoshone, Sarah guessed, from the distinctive pattern on what remained of his clothing. The nearby reservation had been established years ago, though tensions between settlers and the tribe remained high. Sarah didn't hesitate. She pulled the boy's limp form from the branch and cradled him against her chest, struggling against the current back to shore. His body was cold, so cold, but as she laid him on the riverbank, she felt the faintest flutter of breath against her cheek, alive, barely. "Hold on," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear her. "Just hold on." With strength born of desperation, Sarah lifted the child into her arms and began the half-mile trek back to her cabin. By the time she pushed through the door, her arms burning with exertion, the boy's breathing had grown more labored, a worrying rattle in his chest. She laid him on her bed and worked quickly, stripping away his wet clothing and wrapping him in warm blankets, her teacher's training giving way to the nursing skills she had acquired during the war. The wound on his head would need stitches. A quick examination revealed 3 broken ribs and a badly sprained ankle, along with numerous cuts and bruises. He had been in the river for some time, but how had he gotten there? Had he fallen in? Upstream? Been thrown from a horse? Or was there something more sinister at play? Questions for later. First, she needed to save his life. Sarah stoked the fire to a roaring blaze, keeping the cabin almost uncomfortably warm. She cleaned his wounds with whiskey, her heart aching as the boy moaned in unconscious pain when she stitched the gash on his forehead with careful, even sutures. She bound his ribs tightly with strips of clean linen, dressed his other wounds, and spooned thin broth between his lips when she could rouse him enough to swallow. Night fell, and still the boy remained unconscious, though his breathing had steadied and some color had returned to his face. Sarah sat beside the bed, applying cool compresses to his forehead when fever threatened to take hold. Outside, the wind picked up, branches scratching against the cabin walls like spectral fingers seeking entrance. "You're going to be fine," she told the sleeping child, smoothing back his dark hair. "Tomorrow, we'll find your people, your family." Must be worried sick. The boy's eyelids fluttered, and for a moment Sarah thought he might wake. Instead, he murmured something in his native tongue, his small hand clutching at the blanket. Sarah took his hand in hers, surprised by how perfectly it fit within her palm. Something stirred within her, a feeling she had buried alongside her daughter's tiny body. She pushed it away. This child was not hers. He belonged to someone else, and that someone would be searching for him. As if summoned by her thoughts, a sound outside caught her attention. Sarah moved to the window, pushing aside the curtain to peer into the darkness. Nothing but shadows moved in the moonlight, yet the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Was that the gleam of eyes at the edge of the clearing? A trick of moonlight on the trees, surely. Sarah dropped the curtain and checked that her shotgun was loaded and within reach beside the door. A necessary precaution for a woman living alone in the wilderness. Bears were emerging hungry from hibernation, and wolves sometimes prowled. Too close during the lean months. There were human predators too, deserters, outlaws, and those whose minds had been broken by the war. She returned to the boy's side, determined to remain awake through the night. As she settled back into her chair, his eyes suddenly flew open, dark, frightened eyes that fixed on her face with confusion and fear. "It's all right," Sarah said gently. "You're safe here. I found you in the river." The boy tried to sit up, then fell back with a gasp of pain, his hand going to his bound ribs. "Careful," Sarah cautioned. "You've been hurt badly. Do you understand me? Do you speak English?" The child stared at her warily, then gave a slight nod. "What's your name?" Sarah asked. For a long moment she thought he might not answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Little Fox." "Little Fox," Sarah repeated with a smile. "I'm Sarah, Sarah Miller. Can you tell me how you ended up in the river?" Fear flashed across the boy's face. He shook his head once, then turned away from her, curling onto his side, despite the pain it must have caused him. Sarah sighed. "It's all right. You don't have to talk about it now. Are you hungry?" Another slight nod. She warmed more broth and helped him sit up enough to sip it slowly. His hands trembled, but he managed to hold the cup himself, a good sign. As he drank, his eyes darted around the cabin, taking in the sparse furnishings, the shelves of books, the dried herbs hanging from the rafters, and always returning to Sarah's face, as if trying to understand something crucial about her. "Your people," Sarah said when he had finished. "The Shoshone, they must be looking for you. Tomorrow, when you're stronger, I can take you to the reservation." Little Fox's reaction was immediate and alarming. He nearly dropped the cup, shaking his head violently, his eyes wide with terror. "No," he said, "no reservation." Sarah frowned. "But your family—" "They will kill me," he whispered. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and chilling. Sarah sat back, studying the boy's face. Children sometimes exaggerated their fears, but the raw terror in his eyes spoke of something real and immediate. Why would they want to hurt you, Little Fox? she asked gently. He looked down at his hands. I saw something. Something I was not supposed to see. What did you see? Little Fox shook his head again. Bad men, white men, and others, making plans. His English was surprisingly good, though heavily accented. I tried to tell my father, but the bad ones said I lied. Said I dishonored our people with untruths about respected men. Sarah's mind raced. The reservation had been plagued with corruption. Everyone knew that. The Indian agent Hammond was rumored to be selling supplies meant for the Shoshone and pocketing the money, leaving the tribe to face winter with inadequate food and blankets. There were whispers of worse abuses, but no one seemed inclined to investigate. These bad men, Sarah said carefully. Was one of them the Indian agent? Mr. Hammond? Little Fox's eyes widened. You know of him? I know he's supposed to help your people, but I've heard he may not be honest. The boy nodded solemnly. He takes what is ours. But there is worse. They plan something big. Something, he struggled for the word, war. They want war between my people and the white soldiers. Sarah felt cold despite the warmth of the cabin. Tensions had been building for months. A single spark could ignite a conflict that would devastate both sides. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. If Hammond and others were deliberately stoking those tensions for their own gain... Your father, she said. Who is he? Would he believe you if you could speak to him directly without these bad men interfering? Little Fox's expression shifted, a flash of pride breaking through his fear. My father is Running Elk, war chief of the Eastern Shoshone. Sarah tried to hide her surprise. Running Elk was well known even among the settlers, a fierce warrior who had reluctantly agreed to the reservation system to save what remained of his people after the army's brutal campaigns. He was respected, feared, and rumored to be deeply suspicious of whites after repeated broken treaties. And he wouldn't believe you? She asked, finding that hard to reconcile with what she knew of the chief. The bad ones poisoned his mind against me. Said I had been corrupted by the white man's school, that I made up stories to seem important. Little Fox's voice broke. My father's second wife, she who sings, she believes the bad ones. She whispers to my father when he sleeps. She has always hated me because I am my mother's son, and my mother was my father's true heart. The politics of the chief's household were beyond Sarah's understanding, but the pain of a child rejected by a parent that she could comprehend all too well. How did you end up in the river, Little Fox? The boy's face darkened. 2 nights ago, I heard Hammond and the others talking again. They plan to steal more rifles from the fort and blame my people. I was going to run away to find someone who would believe me, but she who sings saw me leaving. She sent 2 of her brothers after me. His voice dropped to a whisper. They caught me by the high rocks above the river. They said I would not be allowed to bring shame to my father's name with my lies. They said I would have an accident. Sarah's blood ran cold. They threw you in. Little Fox nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I tried to swim, but the water was too strong. I hit my head. Then, nothing until I woke here. Sarah fought to control her outrage. Whatever tribal politics were at play, whatever corruption threatened the peace, nothing justified attempting to murder a child. She took Little Fox's hand, squeezing it gently. You're safe now, she said with more conviction than she felt. We'll figure this out together. But even as she spoke the words, Sarah was acutely aware of the isolation of her cabin, miles from the nearest neighbor, a day's ride from Fort Bridger. If those who had tried to kill Little Fox discovered he had survived, if they learned where he was, neither of them would be safe. Preparing this story and narrating it took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Sarah woke with a start, uncertain what had roused her. She had dozed off in the chair beside the bed, her neck stiff and aching. Little Fox still slept, his breathing steady, his face peaceful in the dying firelight. Outside, the wind had died down, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the distant hooting of an owl. Then she heard it, the soft nicker of a horse, not her mare, which was safely stabled behind the cabin. Another horse, somewhere in the darkness beyond her walls. Sarah rose silently, moving to the window. The moon had emerged from behind the clouds, casting silver light over the clearing. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the familiar shadows of trees and the outline of her small vegetable garden. Then a shadow moved, a mounted figure at the edge of the trees, sitting motionless, watching the cabin. As Sarah's eyes adjusted, she made out another rider and another, materializing from the darkness like ghosts. Warriors, unmistakably Shoshone from their distinctive silhouettes, armed with rifles as well as traditional weapons. Sarah's heart began to race. How had they found the boy so quickly? Had they been tracking him since his accident? Or had someone seen her carrying him back to her cabin? Either way, their presence boded ill. If they were the same faction that had tried to kill Little Fox, they had come to finish the job and eliminate any witness to their crime. She moved to the boy's side, gently shaking him awake. His eyes flew open, instantly alert in the way of those accustomed to danger. "They're here," Sarah whispered, "warriors outside the cabin." Fear flashed across Little Fox's face, but he showed remarkable composure for a child his age. "How many?" "I counted 5, but there may be more I can't see." The boy nodded. Grimly, "She who sings brothers and others loyal to her. What will they do?" "They will burn the cabin with us inside," Little Fox said matter-of-factly. "They will say it was an accident, or that my father's enemies did it." Sarah's mind raced. Her shotgun would be little use against multiple armed warriors, and Little Fox was in no condition to flee. The nearest neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, lived 3 miles away, and even if she could somehow get to him, he was deaf as a post and nearly blind. "Is there anyone among them who might listen to reason?" she asked. "Anyone who might believe your story about Hammond?" Little Fox considered this. "Swift Arrow, perhaps. He was my mother's cousin. He is loyal to my father, not to she who sings. Would he be with them?" "I do not know." A sudden pounding on the door made them both jump. Sarah motioned for Little Fox to stay silent, then moved to the door, shotgun in hand. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. "Open the door, white woman." The voice was deep, authoritative, the English heavily accented but clear. "We have business with you." Sarah steeled herself. "It's the middle of the night. Whatever business you have can wait until morning." A brief silence followed, then, "You have something that belongs to us. A boy, the son of our chief. Return him and we will leave in peace." Sarah glanced at Little Fox, who shook his head frantically, real terror in his eyes. She made her decision. "The boy is injured," she called back. "He nearly drowned in the river. He has broken ribs and many wounds. He needs rest and care." "We will care for our own," the voice replied. "Open the door." "I found him half dead," Sarah said, her anger rising. "Someone tried to kill him. How do I know you're not the ones who threw him in the river?" This provoked a burst of conversation in Shoshone among the men outside. When the spokesman replied, his voice had an edge of surprise. "The boy told you this. He told me enough. He told me about Hammond and the others, about the plans for war, about she who sings and her brothers." Another, longer silence. Then a different voice spoke, younger, less harsh. "Let us see the boy. Let him speak for himself." Little Fox's expression changed at the sound of this new speaker. "Swift Arrow," he whispered to Sarah, "my mother's cousin." Sarah hesitated, weighing their limited options. If she refused, they might indeed burn the cabin. If she opened the door, they might simply shoot her and take the boy. But Swift Arrow's presence offered a slim hope. "I'll open the door," she said finally, "but I'll not hand over the boy to those who wish him harm. He stays here until I can speak with his father directly." She motioned for Little Fox to hide behind the large trunk in the corner, where he would be out of the immediate line of sight, but could still hear and speak. Then, shotgun ready, Sarah unbolted the door and stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. The door swung open, revealing two warriors. The older one, his face marked with the scars of past battles, entered first, his dark eyes scanning the cabin and fixing on Sarah with evident disdain. The younger man followed, Swift Arrow, she presumed, his expression more guarded, less openly hostile. "Where is the boy?" the older warrior demanded. "Safe," Sarah replied, "and he'll stay that way." Swift Arrow stepped forward. "We mean no harm to Little Fox. We come on behalf of his father, Chief Running Elk, who has been searching for his son since he disappeared." Sarah stood her ground. "Someone threw him into the river and left him to drown. He says it was she who sings. Brothers on her orders." The older warrior spat on the floor. "Lies. The boy is known for his stories." "These are not stories." Little Fox's voice rang out clearly from his hiding place. "You know the truth, Black Knife. You were there when I told my father what I heard at the trading post. You were there when she who sings called me a liar." Black Knife's hand moved to his knife, his expression darkening. "Come out, boy. Your father waits to hear why you ran away from our people to live with a white woman." "I didn't run to her," Little Fox said, but he emerged from his hiding place, wincing as the movement pulled at his injured ribs. "She saved me after your nephews tried to kill me." Swift Arrow's gaze moved between the boy's injuries and Sarah, reassessing the situation. "You say she who sings ordered this?" Little Fox nodded. "After I heard more about Hammond's plans. They will steal rifles from the fort and use them to attack a wagon train. They want the soldiers to blame our people so they can force us from these lands." Black Knife made a dismissive gesture. "More tales." But Swift Arrow was looking at the boy thoughtfully. "Hammond spoke with she who sings privately 2 days ago. She has been whispering to your father since, telling him you have been bewitched by white man's ideas, that you should be sent away to the school at Fort Bridger." Little Fox met his kinsman's gaze steadily. "You know I speak truth. You have seen how Hammond grows fat while our people grow thin." Swift Arrow turned to Sarah. "Why do you involve yourself in tribal matters, white woman? What do you gain from this?" Sarah lowered her shotgun slightly. "I gain nothing. I found an injured child and did what any decent person would do. I don't care about tribal politics or Hammond or any of it. But I won't stand by while a child is harmed, no matter who gives the order." Something shifted in all Swift Arrow's expression. Respect, perhaps, or at least reassessment. He spoke rapidly to Black Knife in Shoshone, an argument developing between them. Sarah couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear enough. Black Knife wanted to take the boy by force. Swift Arrow counseled another approach. Finally, Swift Arrow turned back to Sarah. "The matter is complicated. Little Fox is the son of our chief's first wife, who died 3 winters ago. She who sings is from a powerful family among our people. Her influence with Running Elk grows stronger each day." "That doesn't give her the right to murder a child," Sarah said firmly. "No," Swift Arrow agreed. "It does not. But making such an accusation against the chief's wife requires more than the word of a boy and a white woman." Sarah considered this. What if we could prove what Hammond is planning? Would Running Elk believe his son then? Swift Arrow hesitated. Perhaps, if the evidence was clear. Then that's what we'll do, Sarah decided. Little Fox and I will go to the fort tomorrow. I know people there, people who will listen. If Hammond is planning to steal weapons, someone must know something. Black Knife laughed harshly. You think they will let you leave this cabin? She who sings brothers are outside. They know the boy lives. They will finish what they started. Unless you stop them, Sarah countered, looking directly at Swift Arrow. Unless you choose to protect your cousin's son. The younger warrior was silent for a long moment, weighing loyalties, traditions, and his own sense of justice. Finally, he nodded once. I will speak with Running Elk. He should hear this from me, not from she who sings or her brothers. Swift Arrow, Black Knife protested. The woman has turned your mind? No! Swift Arrow cut him off. My mind is clear. If the boy speaks truth, then Hammond threatens all our people, not just Little Fox. We will return to our camp. I will speak with Running Elk privately. And the boy? Black Knife demanded. Swift Arrow looked at Sarah, measuring her. The white woman saved his life when our own people tried to take it. He will stay here until I have spoken with Running Elk. He switched to Shoshone, speaking rapidly to Little Fox, who responded in the same language, the exchange brief but intense. We go, Swift Arrow said finally, turning to leave. But others will watch this cabin. Do not try to reach the fort. Wait for my return. Black Knife looked as if he might argue further, but something in Swift Arrow's stance made him reconsider. With a last venomous glance at Sarah and Little Fox, he followed the younger warrior out the door. Sarah closed it behind them, her hands shaking as she shot the bolt. Through the window, she watched the two men mount their horses and speak to the others, waiting in the shadows. For a tense moment, it seemed the group might ignore Swift Arrow's decision and rush the cabin anyway. Then reluctantly, they wheeled their horses around and disappeared into the forest, leaving two warriors behind, positioned on either side of the clearing, watching. They'll kill us both if they get the chance, Little Fox said quietly, sinking onto the edge of the bed, his face pale with pain and exhaustion. She who sings brothers will not stop until I am dead. Sarah helped him lie back down, checking his bandages. Then we won't give them the chance. Swift Arrow seems honorable. If he can convince your father. My father loved my mother very much, Little Fox interrupted. After she died, something in him died too. He listens to she who sings because her words fill the silence my mother left. His young face looked suddenly old, with understanding beyond his years. But he's still a great chief. He will remember his honor if Swift Arrow can reach him first. Sarah smoothed the blanket over him. Try to rest. I'll keep watch. As Little Fox drifted back to sleep, Sarah returned to the window, studying the two warriors who remained. They had positioned themselves strategically, one to the east, one to the west, watching not just the cabin's door, but the path that led toward Fort Bridger. They were planning for a long vigil, which meant Sarah and Little Fox were effectively prisoners. She stoked the fire and settled back into her chair, shotgun across her lap. Swift Arrow had said to wait for his return, but how long would that? Take hours, days, and what if he failed to convince Running Elk? What if she who sings influence was too strong? Or the warriors outside received new orders before Swift Arrow could return? Sarah's gaze fell on the trunk where Little Fox had hidden. Inside were her most precious possessions, her husband's watch, her daughter's christening gown, letters, photographs, and mementos of the life she had left behind. Also inside was a map, carefully marked with alternative routes to Fort Bridger, including one that few knew about, a narrow pass through the mountains that her uncle had discovered during his trapping days. If Swift Arrow failed to return, or if he brought bad news, they would need that route. But traveling with an injured child through rugged terrain, possibly pursued by warriors who knew the land far better than she did. The odds were not in their favor. Sarah's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knocking at the rear of the cabin, not from the door, but from the window near the back wall. She froze, then moved silently across the room, shotgun ready. Through the small pane, she could make out a face. Not one of the warriors who had entered her cabin, but an older native woman, her face lined with age and wisdom. The woman made a gentle beckoning motion, then pointed to herself and to Little Fox, miming rocking a child. She raised her hand in what Sarah recognized as a peace sign, then pointed urgently to the back of the cabin. Sarah hesitated, unsure whether to trust this unexpected visitor. She glanced at Little Fox, still sleeping, then back at the woman, who was now holding something up to the window. A medicine pouch decorated with symbols Sarah didn't recognize, but which seemed to be significant based on the earnest way the woman displayed it. Making a split-second decision, Sarah moved to the bed and gently woke Little Fox. When his eyes fluttered open, she whispered, "There's a woman at the back window. An older Shoshone woman. She seems to want to help us." Little Fox struggled to sit up, wincing. "What does she look like?" Sarah described the visitor, her deeply lined face, her silver-streaked hair in 2 braids, the distinctive medicine pouch. Little Fox's eyes widened. "Singing Bird, the medicine woman, my mother's mother." "Your grandmother. Can we trust her?" The boy nodded without hesitation. "She taught me the old ways, the true ways, before the reservation. She speaks little English, but she is wise and brave. If she is here, it means Swift Arrow sent her." Sarah helped Little Fox to his feet, supporting his weight as they made their way to the back window. When the boy saw the older woman, his face lit up with recognition and relief. He spoke to her rapidly in Shoshone, an exchange Sarah couldn't understand, but which clearly held great significance for both of them. Singing Bird responded, her aged hands moving in expressive gestures, occasionally glancing toward the front of the cabin where the warriors kept their vigil. "She says we must go with her," Little Fox translated. "Now while she who sings is meeting with Hammond, Swift Arrow has spoken with my father, but he is torn between his love for me and his obligation to his new wife's family. Singing Bird fears that if we wait until morning it will be too late." Sarah looked at the frail old woman, then at the wounded boy barely able to stand. "How? The warriors are watching, and you're in no condition to travel." Little Fox relayed her concerns to his grandmother. Singing Bird smiled, reaching into a pouch at her waist and producing a small container made of horn. She said something, making a gesture like smoke rising. "She has brought medicine to help me travel," Little Fox explained. "And she knows ways to move unseen. She was a scout in her youth before women were forbidden such roles." "But where would we go?" Sarah asked. "Not to the reservation, surely?" Little Fox listened as Singing Bird spoke again, her voice barely audible through the glass. "To the sacred caves in the high valley," he translated. "A place known only to our family line, the keepers of the old medicines. She says we will be safe there until my father makes his decision." Sarah weighed their options. Staying meant waiting for Swift Arrow's return, which might never come, or might bring with it a death sentence if Running Elk sided with his second wife. The fort was too far and too obvious a destination. Singing Bird's hidden refuge might be their best hope if they could reach it. "How do we get past the warriors?" she asked. Little Fox translated the question. Singing Bird's response was accompanied by a sly smile and a gesture toward the trees behind the cabin. "She has created a diversion," Little Fox said, "something to draw their attention away from us, but we must hurry." Sarah made her decision. "Wait here. I need to gather a few things." Quickly, she packed a small bag with essential supplies: bandages, herbs, food, a canteen of water, a sharp knife, and matches. She added her husband's compass and the map from the trunk, then retrieved her shotgun and a box of shells. If they were caught, she would not go down without a fight. When she returned to Little Fox, he had opened the window and was speaking urgently with his grandmother. Sarah helped him climb through, trying to be gentle with his injuries, then followed, closing the window behind her. They crouched in the shadows beside the cabin as Singing Bird handed Little Fox the horn container. He drank its contents with a grimace, then passed it back to her. The medicine woman led them toward the tree line, moving with surprising agility for her age. They had just reached the cover of the forest when a commotion erupted from the far side of the clearing, shouts of alarm and the whinny of frightened horses. The warriors left their posts, racing toward the disturbance, giving Sarah, Little Fox, and Singing Bird the opportunity to slip deeper into the woods. "What did she do?" Sarah whispered, as they moved as quickly as Little Fox's condition would allow. The boy managed a weak smile. "Set their horses free with burrs under their saddles, and maybe left a small offering of skunk oil near their belongings." Despite the gravity of their situation, Sarah found herself smiling too. "Your grandmother is a formidable woman." Little Fox nodded proudly. "She is of the old way, before we were forced onto the reservation, before our people were divided." Singing Bird led them along a nearly invisible path, occasionally stopping to check their back trail or to help Little Fox over difficult terrain. The medicine she had given him seemed to be working. He moved with greater ease than should have been possible with his injuries, though Sarah knew they would exact a price later when the effects wore off. As they climbed higher into the foothills, Sarah glanced back at her cabin, now a tiny square of darkness in the moonlit clearing below. In the few years she had lived there, it had become a sanctuary, a place of healing after her devastating losses. Now she was leaving it behind, possibly forever, to help a child she had known for less than a day. Yet somehow, the decision felt right. She had come west seeking isolation, believing that cutting herself off from human connection would protect her from further pain. But in saving Little Fox, something long dormant had awakened within her, a sense of purpose, of belonging to something larger than her grief. Singing Bird touched her arm, pointing to a narrow defile between two rock formations ahead. Beyond, it lay their path to the sacred caves, and whatever future awaited them there, with a Shoshone war chief torn between family factions, a corrupt Indian agent plotting violence, and a delicate peace hanging in the balance. Sarah squared her shoulders and moved forward, helping Little Fox navigate the rough ground. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't. Want to pass these up? Just click and check them out.